I would like you to consider if you are a person who has any kind of like compulsive habit, addiction, or substance abuse problem. And when I say compulsive habit, I mean anything. And when I say addiction, I mean anything, whether it's TV, phone, gambling, sex, I don't know. I'm sure there's food. I'm sure there's lots of them. Shopping, you know, if you have anything that is something that feels a little bit out of your control in that way, where you're doing it, whatever it is, and you're getting this dopamine hit, and in that moment, you can either like sort of block out the world, or in that moment, you can, I mean, maybe it's video games. I don't know what it is, but I would like you to consider addiction or compulsive habits as survival tools. I've said it before and I will say it again, my friends. Being a human on earth right now is really hard. There is a lot of suffering. There's a lot of war. There is a lot of murder. There is just a lot of really awful things going on. Just terrible. And I don't care what anybody else says, every single person on this planet has the capacity to feel every other individual person's pain. We have a collective consciousness. It is a net that is over this, and it is it's the consciousness net, the net of consciousness that runs over this entire planet, connecting every single human being on the earth. There is no possible way that you can, even if you live like I do out in the woods, I go to town once a week. I think it's a really good week if I can make it like a week and a half between town visits. There's lots of trees between me and the nearest neighbors. We're on acres. And yet, and yet, I am still plugged in to all of human consciousness, just like you are plugged into all of human consciousness. And if you are a human on the earth, it can be a scary existence, okay? It can feel really intense. And yes, it can be so beautiful and so full of joy and love. So I do not want to focus on the nastiness. However, we have to acknowledge it because otherwise we are denying it, and that is not healthy either. Right? Just pretending that everything is love, light, and joy does not make it so. However, acknowledging that there is a whole lot of darkness all around us makes it a whole lot easier to be a light in that darkness. Denying it does not work. So back to my point. Addiction as a survival tool. I believe, and I can only make these assertions based on my own experience, what I've witnessed in other people, and what I personally have felt. And despite having an inherited problem with alcohol from both sides of my family, generations, but who knows how many generations back? Who knows how many generations back? Besides that, or in addition to that, There's also the fact I remember very clearly being a teenager and being drunk in those, those first few times and how good it felt. I mean, it was so easy. I just felt like so free and joyful and like it felt like a mini vacation, a mini vacation from the hardship of being human, as like easy as my life was as a just a small town kid growing up in America, like, yeah, we weren't wealthy, but we weren't starving. And, my mother, for the most part, was a single mother. I mean, she was with my father for a time, and then she was with my stepfather for a time. But there was certainly a lot of struggle. But however, my life was not that hard. But there's still the underlying suffering of all humanity that I was plugged into just as everybody else is plugged into. No matter how easy or hard their day-to-day lives are, there's still that. And even if you don't watch the news or pay attention to the all the things on social media or whatever, there's a there is a sadness just in being human because of all the suffering. And whether it's playing a video game for 10 hours straight, because, when you're playing a video game, you're not really having to deal with the problems of being human. You don't have to feel that. Even if you're not consciously aware that you're feeling it in the first place, it doesn't matter. You're still feeling it. We're all feeling it. And that is not to say we can't experience joy and lightness and fun, because I am like the queen of joy and lightness and fun. However, I'm still aware that, a good portion of this world is suffering a lot, and there's a lot of awful, awful dark things going on. And so, like, I honestly, personally don't blame anyone for picking up a heroin habit or smoking meth or, I don't know, gambling until they ruin their lives and steal from their family, like none of it, none of it, none of it. And if you, to me, I might get a little bit upset, but still gonna actually really like understand, well, okay, at the root of all this is a great deal of suffering that all of humanity is experiencing. And so I guess I guess I'm just inviting you to whatever, the things are that you do to numb it out, just to not be hard on yourself and to realize that we're all here. We're all feeling that suffering, whether or not we're physically in a war zone experiencing it. It's affecting every single one of us. And it's not affecting us to the same degree. Absolutely not. I'm not I'm not as affected as someone who is literally in Palestine or Ukraine or wherever, Congo or anywhere else where there is just really extreme human suffering, or even just someone who's homeless on the street and who's hungry every day, all day long, you know? you know, especially people who are really, really very, very sensitive. Like we all are sensitive to certain degrees, but certainly there are people who are more sensitive and more psychic and more uh, connected in a more intense way to the collective consciousness, where they have like a greater, it's like coming into them even stronger, so they're just like even more overwhelmed by it, you know. And while I am saying this, and it almost sounds like I'm making excuses for myself and for others, and I guess I kind of am on one hand, but on another, I don't think it has to continue. It's not the best coping mechanism. It really isn't. And for most of us, whatever the addiction is, or whatever the big yucky problem that we feel yucky about, whatever it is, more often than not, it causes us more harm than it medicates us. You know, it causes more harm than comfort. That those moments of elation, of joy, of like escape, they only last so long, and then there's consequences on the other side of that. And we don't feel good. We don't feel good on the other side of that. So, yeah, and maybe I am making excuses for all of us, but also I'm saying it's time. It's time to let that go. Because I will say from my own experience, breaking free from those cycles of addiction and self, medication, which then actually leads to self-harm, really. Getting out of those cycles feels so much better any than any drink, or than any line of meth, or I've never shot heroin, so I don't know, but I imagine it does, because the joy and well, not just joy, but the wholesomeness, I guess. And I don't mean wholesome like we think of, like granola bars are wholesome, or like atomic families are wholesome, or whatever. I'm saying wholesome like whole, like it's a whole circle. The wholesomeness feels so much better than any sort of temporary band-aid ever could. So while I am excusing it a little bit and acknowledging that, especially in the beginning, it can feel like a temporary solution. But as we all know who have done these sort of things long term, it becomes more painful over time. So again, I guess it's just I'm giving you another reason to release yourself from guilt and shame, giving you another perspective to just look at the world and understand that you're a human being, and you have every right to feel like like there's a lot of pain and suffering, and that something needs to happen to make one feel okay. And I am offering you the way to feel okay. I think the way that I found to feel okay is to dig deep, heal those broken parts, those fractured parts, energetically shift those patterns of those cycles of abuse, get free from the parasitic entities that are causing deeper suffering and are encouraging hamster wheels, of negative emotional experiences. And then also shifting the mind and the thought forms, the thought patterns, and incorporating magic and claiming one's power. So that's my answer. And also, I just want to invite you to, even though it is tough, to know that there is a light. And I'm personally proof of that. And I've seen other people come out on the other side too. And there's light. So if you're still in the tunnel, know there's light. And if you're no matter where you are in this journey, it can always get better. I love you. You're perfect. You're doing a great job.